Hey guys, what it do? It's your boy Supreme Uchiha the God, and today I want to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, the latest chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen obviously ended on a cliffhanger, and we got a question here: Is Gojo just not that strong? Is Sukuna just way too much sauce? Does he just got way too much in him, bro? His bag is heavy, bro. You know what I'm saying? He got a Gucci leather alligator skin bag on him, bro. Cause the way he was finessing, bro, he came through with the maximum, and he came through with the goddamn the what you call that thing, bro? Why do I always be forgetting all these things? You know what I'm saying? But he came in with the domain expansion, and his domain expansion, which was explained, is not like open barrier, but it's barrierless. You know what I'm saying? It's like paint in the sky type beat, and he really cooked with it, bro. Like he came through and really cooked with it, and it was sensational to see. Like, and he just destroyed and dismantled Gojo's exterior domain, because the actual domains was balancing each other out. You know what I'm saying? Because they both so OP. Though, so it's not a matter of who's stronger necessarily. It's a matter of who's more skilled. And it seems right now that Sukuna is more skilled, which makes sense. Like he lived to way way longer. Um, Knows about almost everything to do with Jujutsu. His level of barriers is almost at the same level as Kenjaku and Tengen. So he's really like leveled up. While Gojo wasn't really taught much because like the higher ups hated him, so he was kind of sheltered. So and everybody was so much weaker than him that he didn't really get an opportunity to pave himself in the same way as Sukuna. So I think actually Gojo is the more talented out of the two, even though Sukuna is superior skilled and experienced. I think Gojo is the most talented sorcerer of all time, despite this, because I think if he lived in the Heian era, I think he'd become stronger than even Sukuna, to be honest, just because of the consistent battles. Because not everybody he meets is going to be Sukuna, but from there he's going to learn maximum techniques. He's going to learn, you know what I'm saying, domain amplification, which actually is what I meant to say instead of maximum technique, because Sukuna didn't use a maximum technique. He used domain amplification to crack through the infinity. So I think that's what I think. I think that's what this battle tells me. I think that's what everything so far has told me. Gojo is just an elite, quick learner. But the problem is he doesn't have that many opportunities. He doesn't fight enough. He doesn't go through enough Tojos and enough Sukunas and enough, high tier opponents where he can test his mettle. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's his biggest weakness, his biggest flaw. Also, he trusts in his student quite a lot. But I think that's actually his superpower, and I think his students are gonna prove him right, because I think his students are gonna do something about it. But the fight is not over. I don't think the fight is over. I think definitely. I think it should have. It was always implied. I think that Sukuna is more skilled. It makes sense. But I think Gojo is ultimately more gifted, which kind of sounds crazy. Because even though if Gojo loses, let's say he loses here, which I think he hasn't lost yet, it'd be disappointing reading wise. You know what I'm saying? Narratively speaking, it'd be like, damn, Gojo should have done more. But I think the reason it doesn't really make Gojo any weaker is because domains are literally the pinnacle of Jujutsu, right? Sukuna had no other way to defeat Gojo apart from the domain, because his amplification like did a lot, but it took too much time to chip away at it, and then Gojo has time to react and hit, and Gojo also didn't have to really let Sukuna touch him, considering he was lifting him with gravity manipulation and shit, or infinity air whatever manipulation, space manipulation, and slamming against walls and shit. So but the problem is physical attacks don't really do damage to either of them, because the cost energy is too strong, and obviously Gojo just has infinity to prevent anything to even get to his cost energy in the first place. But infinity is activated by curse energy, so it's really interesting, the delicacies of the battle. And I think Sukuna is just again showcasing higher knowledge and higher affinity. But I think that's due to time and experience, and also him eating and consuming humans. I don't know if he gains the knowledge. He probably does. He gains insight, yada yada yada. And I think him being in Megumi's body and Yuji's body also helped him know even more about Gojo's personalities, Gojo's ways, Gojo's tendencies. I think all of these helped him in this battle. The little advantages, but in a battle like this with two of the strongest, I think it matters. Um, Ultimately, Gojo might lose, which is fine. I think it makes sense for him to lose. But the only problem with him losing is who's gonna stop Sukuna if Gojo loses. So that's the only reason. And like Yuji would have to go through the biggest ass pull power up of all time in order to actually be able to defeat Sukuna within this year, because that's when Gege wants to end the series by this year. So like, you know what, in 10 15 chapters he's supposed to just go from not even the strongest in his school to stronger than Gojo and Sukuna, and whatever Kenjaku cooks up. I don't think it makes much sense that that's the case. So I think Sukuna will probably, him and Gojo will probably stalemate. I still think that's the most likely outcome, because I don't really see Sukuna losing. I don't think it's super narratively I don't think it's narratively satisfying if he loses either. Even though I want Gojo to win, I don't think that's narratively satisfactory if Sukuna loses. It's also not narratively that satisfactory if Gojo loses this easily. But the problem with Gojo losing is you create so many more problems. And the problem with Gojo winning is the story has to end within like the next chapter, right? So I think a stalemate makes the most sense, because a stalemate, both of them are incapacitated or whatever. All the students go up there to try to save Megumi during this time and heal Gojo. And as they're doing that, Kenjaku finishes his ultimate plan, maybe steals Sukuna's body and activates that ultimate monster. And now here, all of these students are going to be useful, right? All of them are going to be useful. They're going to hunt down Kenjaku, kill Kenjaku, and then, or hunt down, look for that monster, try to fight him, team up with Gojo all together, and maybe even Sukuna, I don't know, but and because he stalemated Gojo, maybe they fight again after they defeat everybody and they both die, or they stalemate, or whatever happens, doesn't matter. But I think that creates a more of a climax. But the thing is, there's just not that much story left. So if this fight is rushed like this, I don't really know what to say. I would say that I think it makes more sense that Gojo's alive. He does have reverse curse technique, so he can be constantly reverse curse techniquing himself because of infinity. Because remember, he's constantly healing his brain all the time anyway. So he could be like, as the cut begins to penetrate, he heals. As the cut begins to penetrate, he heals. Now, obviously, that's gonna destroy his curse energy. But remember, he can open his curse energy degrades way less than everybody else's. Within this time, I think he's going to try to hold on to this for as long as possible and then activate his domain expansion, because Sukuna can't hold on to his domain expansion as much as Gojo can, because Gojo can activate his domain expansions more than Sukuna, because in a battle of attrition, Gojo wins because his curse energy is way less used than Sukuna. Not way less, but it's less used than Sukuna. Now Sukuna has more than double Utah's, and Utah has more than Gojo, right? So he has double Utah's, and he has way better control of it than Utah. So what does that tell you? It just tells you that Sukuna is a different type of beast, and again, he eats other people, so he probably takes the curse energies as well. And he's now in Megumi's body, so I would assume he also has Megumi's curse energy on top of that. So he is really cooking on a different level right now. But I think that's what makes it all the more exciting. I think I talked about before the narrative implications of the story, that Gojo is probably stronger than Prime Sukuna. And I think that's the case because a lot of people are like, oh, but he's not using Maharaga, he's not using whatever. But he gets advantages automatically just by being in Megumi's body, right? Because he has all his full powers, and on top of it, he has Megumi's curse energy. You know what I mean? So no matter what, he gets somewhat of a boost. He hasn't used it yet because he can't use domain amplification and that curse technique. You can't do it. So if he uses Maharaga, he can't use domain amplification. He obviously thinks that domain amplification is more useful against Gojo than the Ten Shadows technique is. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something that could be the case, or it could be in case Gojo survives my lever and shine, my shrine, or what I think it's actually just called shrine. domain, that he's destroying domain. If he survives that, then I'll use the 10 shadows technique. But I'd rather not, because domain amplification might be the more useful thing. So, we don't know. I guess we'll discover all of that at the end of the battle. But I think they stalemate. Kenjaku steals his body. The students get there a fraction late, and they try to save Gojo. Or they just get there as Kenjaku gets there. Kenjaku, it's either they save Gojo or they chase Kenjaku. Maybe some chase Kenjaku, some stay to save Gojo, which means Yuta would have to stay, and Yuta is the only one that can do reverse curse technique on somebody else in the team. He's the only one that can even do reverse curse technique on the team anyway. So he'd have to stay with Gojo, and he's the strongest one. So, and I don't see Kenjaku having a problem with fighting the rest of them combined without Yuta. You know what I'm saying? I think Yuta is the powerhouse. So if he's there saving Gojo, Kenjaku can defeat the other two or fend them off, injure them, and carry on with Sukuna. Either revive him or feed him Tengen, and create the monster that he wanted to create. So I think there's so many methods and ways that the story could go, which I think is more interesting when Gojo's alive, because if Kenjaku does that, unless of course Gege is trying to make sure that everybody dies, like Sukuna and Kenjaku win, you know what I'm saying? But if Sukuna wins, Sukuna has no reason to keep Kenjaku around, especially since Kenjaku was trying to create a monster that would kill everybody else, which means all of Sukuna's food won't be there anymore. So, those I'm just thinking of all the possible plot lines. But look, I could also be completely wrong. But that would be my guess, and that's why I think that it's not over yet. I'll also be kind of anticlimactic if Gojo destroys him in the first 2 chapters, and then he gets, obviously the strongest domain. He gets hit with that. And actually, it's not the strongest domain, sorry. It's the most refined domain, because strength-wise, again, they actually stalemated. But yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. The students, we'll see what they'll do. Because they don't seem to be that close to the battle. Obviously, they can't be that close to the battle. Kenjaku can't either, because we see buildings are getting absolutely obliterated outside of Gojo's domain. And the Gojo's domain looks massive as well. So it's probably considerably bigger than most people's domain anyway. And obviously way stronger than everybody else's domain. And I think that's probably why Kenjaku was afraid about using his domain against Gojo, because his one has no attacks outside the barrier, right? Sukuna's sure hit is different because his domain itself is attacking. But one thing a few people mentioned, actually, Zonen mentioned, if you look at everybody's domain expansion, it's an extension of the curse technique, right? But Gojo has infinity, right? And I get infinite knowledge or whatever, but his power has nothing to do with that. His power is controlling space and time. So does he have another technique that his domain expansion borrows from that he will use? You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's anything to do with that special training, because I think that special training was just mentally preparing himself to fight Megumi without holding back. And I think that was his special training that he did for the past month. I don't really think, technique-wise, I think obviously he probably has techniques that he hasn't used. I'm enjoying the fight so far, so I don't want it to end. I want it to be the best fight, because if you remember, Hakari's fight was like 5 chapters long, and it was sensational, and he died like at the end of every chapter. Remember how we felt at the end of almost every chapter when Hakari, we thought he's definitely dead, and he just wasn't, and he won. I think this is that type of fight. I mean, at least I hope, just because I want to enjoy it for a lot longer. But yeah, what do you guys think? I think it's definitely not over. Sukuna is probably, because I think he's more refined in Jujutsu, he's probably a little bit stronger than Gojo, but Gojo's innate abilities are more hacks. But Sukuna's domain expansion is more hacks because of the refinement. So if Gojo can figure out how to refine his domain expansion, which he, again, remember, everything he tries, Gojo is just amazing at it automatically. So maybe by seeing Sukuna's domain expansion, he'd be able to replicate it immediately off bat and cancel it out. Because we got to understand that this guy figures shit out in a flash. So he's never seen a domain like this before. But now that he's seen it, if he survives this, he can be like, okay, I get it. domain expansion, and it's open space, and so the range of Sukuna's blades is still within the barrier, and therefore they cancel each other out and they continue the battle. But I'm just excited to see what happens. Like this is creme de la creme. But only if it continues. If it ends now, disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, what you guys think? Has been your boy Supreme Uchiha the God. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'm loving this fight. I'm out.